So we're here with Mario Nawfal at CPAC Hungary 2025. Mario, you're in a country that has a bit of a bad rap in some circles around the world. How do you like it here?
Has a bad rap. I think it's getting a better rap now. It's becoming, to some people, a beacon of resistance to centralized power.
And how do you like it so far? Like, who have you met? What have you done?
I've been to Budapest before. I was yesterday, obviously, with the Prime Minister, and hopefully coming back to sit down with him further. I was with your president, former president, last year as well. So yeah, I've been to Hungary twice in the last year. And before I got into politics, I used to come here to enjoy the beautiful aspect of it, the non-political side of it. But at least today, I've just been speaking to former leaders about, like, one thing I'm focusing on, and we talked about it yesterday, is the centralization of power. Like what we're seeing when it comes to the various strategies they're using to deal with dissent. And the fact that we're seeing it in Germany as well is kind of ringing the alarm for me, and I'm starting to focus a lot more on it. It started off with Romania. That's why my focus started coming in to understand how this is even possible in Europe. And then what I'm seeing now what's happening with the AFD and what's happening with the FPO and the rest of the parties in the Netherlands, etc. Not looking good.
So the special thing about you is you're not just on X, you're X-exclusive. Your show is the most watched show on X. So how do you see what sets X apart from other social media organs, and how did this total free speech experiment go that Elon launched when taking over X?
So Elon has done something that many others were pretty scared to do, and that's stand up to the system that's allowing some to censor. And that system includes not only the policymakers, includes unelected bureaucrats, includes advertisers, includes other companies, conglomerates, NGOs. And he started dissecting it. And people like myself admired what he's done. Others that were unaware of the amount of censorship that exists in the US and the rest of the world were critical of him. And then we saw Trump take office. And then we saw him dismantle the USAID, among other institutions. And then it kind of hit people in the face like, hold on, that we do have a problem here. And when they dismantled the USAID, I prefer not to call it USAID, even though it's easier, USAID, we started to see the amount of influence, the tentacles it has everywhere around the world. And that includes Europe, that includes Romania, that includes Hungary.
I've just today seen a meme by the Babylon Bee that talked about Elon leaving the tough job of making government more efficient for the easier job of getting people to Mars. Why did he actually leave government, and did Doge attain the achievements that it set out to do?
Yeah, so his mandate came to an end, and he can't do this forever. He's not making money from this. Like, yeah, I'd rather he focuses on taking us to Mars. Despite how important it is what he's doing, he's got some very smart people. I'm not speaking on his behalf, that's my observation. He's got really smart people that are leading USAID now. So I think what people expect him to do this full time and not get paid and get attacked politically and get Tesla, the cars torched. No business person has done 10% of what Elon's done. And I wish Bezos, Zuckerberg, all the other guys, they've done a lot for society, but I wish they step up a lot more. And then I wish people like Bill Gates and others as well either help or at least stop harming the system by leading to more centralization, more interference around the world, etc.
Would you say that the engine, the mechanism of the American state has undergone a fundamental transformation under Doge and under Trump?
Undergoing. It hasn't undergone, it's undergoing. Mike Benz, who I've sat with for a while, and he's a lot deeper in that world. He's great. I really like Mike. He's a lot deeper in that world, and he said to me, he's like, Mario, that will take 50 years to dismantle. So we just started the process, but it's so ingrained in society. And when we say it's so ingrained, we're talking about it's systemic, not just the organizations, the NGOs. It's generally how systems operate is being abused. Like we're talking about Europe, see the cordon sanitaire. That's systemic. That allows different political parties to isolate one political party, even if voters select it as the winning party, the winning, not coalition, but the winning political party. And then the coalition in Austria, the number 2, number 3, number 4 kind of went together and isolated the first one, which is crazy to me. It's not how democracy is meant to work. So that's what I mean. Like, it's not on the. I don't want to blame this person or that organization, or a lot of people have to blame people like Soros. I'd rather look at the system itself and see where the flaws are.
What has undergone a fundamental transformation, though, under the Trump administration is international trade. And just like everybody else in Europe, Hungary is also very concerned about what's going to hit it with.
It's undergoing. Yes, so
it's also undergoing. Do you think we have anything to fear?
I don't know. You got to ask Trump. Trump's right-hand people probably don't know. So I think we just got to find out. And I'm not going to speculate here, pontificate on whether he's just leveraging this narrative to strengthen America's position and start focusing more on China, or we will see a fundamental shift towards protectionism, which I hope is not the case.
Do you think he actually thinks that any kind of trade imbalance can only be a result of unfair trade practices? Do you think that's a fundamental understanding that he has?
He's not stupid. No. He's a very smart guy. He's got extremely intelligent people by his side, so that help him make those decisions. So, I wouldn't underestimate their strategy. In my opinion, the end goal is not protectionism. They still believe in free trade. They still believe in how the global economy functions. I think they're just trying to strengthen America's position on the global stage, and that's a fair goal to have for any president. America first. The way he's going about it is the one you can criticize. He's doing it the right way or not. He's got to wait and find out.
So there's this idea floating around Europe that Trump doesn't like the European Union, that he likes dealing with individual member states on a bilateral basis, but he doesn't really like the European Union. Would you concur? Do you think that is actually the case, that he doesn't like the EU as an institution?
I think he doesn't like what the EU stands for rather than the EU as an institution. Ukraine will be the best example. The EU is supporting certain practices that Trump is fighting in the US. And Trump has been victim to a lot of the same things that politicians here in Europe were victim of, that point the finger to the EU. You said again, going back to Romania, he pointed the finger at Macron and the EU. And what happened in Romania, the election was completely cancelled. Another level to the US. What's happening in Germany? We're seeing the same lawfare, we're seeing the same of the AfD. We see so the lawfare that we're seeing them isolated further. We're seeing supporters targeted, and now we're seeing labels being used as well. We're seeing them being censored, the label of certified extremists. We're seeing speech being censored. These are all things that Trump either faced, from lawfare to censorship, even being attempts to ban him in a few states, if you remember. So he's gone through this. He's been the victim to the same strategies, and he's fighting those strategies in the US. And J.D. Vance's speech kind of articulated it well. Is that these are values that the US stands for, and I think that any democracy should stand for, including Europe. So that's his focus, instead of putting it like, hey, he's against the EU as an institution.
You just mentioned...
By the way, same applies to NATO. I don't think he's anti-NATO. He's, again, against the NATO strategy, and he's against some decisions by NATO, and the lack of... pulling their weight, not increasing the funding, and the US essentially becoming the big brother and supporting all other countries. If he focuses America first, I think it's very fair for him to be critical of that. It doesn't mean he's anti-NATO.
You've just mentioned Ukraine, and in the context of Ukraine, you've talked to people that not many other people have talked to. I have President Lukashenko of Belarus in mind. It was in your show that Lukashenko invited both Putin and Zelensky to Minsk for a meeting, I think in Trump's company. Did you judge his intentions as genuine? Do you think anyone is being genuine in the war? And do you think Putin right now is taking Trump for a ride with the negotiations around Ukraine?
Yeah, look, President Lukashenko wants peace. I think a lot of people will be surprised, but I think even President Putin wants peace. Maybe less so now than before. I think he was more critical of being in a long war when he invaded Ukraine, because Lukashenko said he didn't expect the war to go the way it went and NATO to step in the way they did and support Ukraine. So they didn't expect that level of resistance. And back then he expected a swift, in and out, and being able to achieve certain objectives. That was his goal. And now we're in a prolonged war, and his intentions have changed now, considering that they're winning on the ground, and they're, I want to say, in a good position, but in their perception, they're in a better position. The Prime Minister Orban said it yesterday. A year ago, Ukraine was in a better position. NATO was coming in to support them, supporting them with weapons. They were gaining ground, but now the tide has shifted. And Prime Minister Orban talked to Zelensky. He was anticipating where we are today, and anticipating that a prolonged war would work in Russia's best interest. So when you put yourself in Putin's shoes, he doesn't want the war to end. I think obviously Zelensky wants the war to end, but it's under what conditions? And those conditions are no longer between. Well, it's been a while. They haven't been between Ukraine and Russia. Those conditions, one could argue from the get-go, those conditions are between the US and Russia. So, Putin's in a position like, what can I buy? What can I get? What can I bargain for to end this war? To allow Trump to achieve his objective of ending the war. And that's where we're at. I mean, everyone wants the war to end. It's under what circumstances that will be, and I think the biggest loser is going to be Ukraine, unfortunately. It's just heartbreaking to see.
Sure. So let's just talk about demography a bit, because I know Elon is very passionate about it. I know you've conducted a measure of interviews on that. Do you see any best practice floating around in the world that sort of could solve the issues Hungary is grappling with, the EU and the entire developed world is grappling with in terms of the low birth rates and low birth numbers?
Yeah, I don't have an answer. Like, as I said earlier, I did speak to your president about this, and that was one of the best conversations I've had, and she's leading that fight against the collapsing birth rates around the world. She's done well in Hungary as well. Her policies have had success. But when Prime Minister Orban was asked that question yesterday, he said the same thing, like he just doesn't have the answer, because the question was framed in a way like, how could we, we're in a position where we kind of need immigration to a certain level because of collapsing birth rates and for the economy not to collapse. But at the same time, every country wants to protect its culture. Most countries want to protect their culture. But then if you stop immigration, how are you able to address the collapse of birth rates? There is no answer. Like, most of the countries are struggling. One would argue, like, all right, cool, a lot of people are not having kids because they need more money. Well, there's been attempts where you just give grants to families when you have more kids, and they haven't worked to a certain degree in some countries, but not as much as one would expect. Well, one of it would be more kind of a cultural change on how the younger generation approaches kids. Do you have any kids?
Not yet, but we're planning.
I mean, how old are you?
24.
24, are you still young? Okay, well, I don't have kids either. But for people that... the reason people are not having kids, they're either, cultural purposes, it's been stigmatized in some ways, and also just delaying it. Constantly like, we'll have it later, when we're ready. Some are doing it for economic reasons. There's just so many different reasons, and it's just so difficult to address the issue. There's not one answer to that problem. Some have tried to kind of put a band-aid that is immigration. Not a band-aid, a solution that is immigration, which comes at its own...
So your one gig is the show, but your other gig is crypto. And to conclude, I would just ask you to make a 1-minute elevator pitch to those who don't understand why this is important.
Crypto? People still don't understand crypto is important?
Yeah. Yes.
You've got the President of the United States talking about a Bitcoin reserve. We've got the President of the United States launching a coin. We've got a President of the United States and his family launching an entire project with a stable coin. So I don't understand why people still need me to tell them why crypto is important. But I think that at $2.something trillion market cap. Look, if I want to make the pitch now, the foundational benefit that Bitcoin, crypto, and blockchain bring is decentralization. Like, I look at that one north star of every technological evolution. Like AI, this brings a new form of intelligence to society, to our planet. Blockchain, crypto, Bitcoin allows us to democratize or decentralize various aspects of society. And a lot of the problems we're talking about are due to centralization of power. That's the core reason that these issues are happening. Blockchain could be one of the solutions as we fight that.
Thank you for coming on the show, Mario. Have a good one.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you.